Leanne Ward, practicing dietitian and nutritionist, social media icon, and podcaster.
Coffee itself is absolutely fine. The recommendations are 200 to 300 milligrams a day. The gut is like a muscle. You can train it to adapt and tolerate more foods long term.
Tell me about chocolate, bad or good?
The baseline diet isn't good enough to be having these multiple soul foods that we're having every single day. You can do irreversible damage to your body if you're supplement stacking. It's boring, it's not sexy, people don't want to hear it, but we do not eat enough vegetables. 65-70% of Australians are overweight or obese. The three nutrients that slow down that sugar spike are fat, protein, and
But people are very interested in what you have to say about what to put in your body and what you should put in, like, your family's body. So welcome to Transforming the Game.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, 2025, I see, is a bit of a rebrand for you, a total refresh. What brought that about?
So when I started my Facebook and my Instagram account, this is about 11 years ago now. Taking you right back, I was one of the first Australian-based dietitians and nutritionists to really utilize Instagram as more for like work, if that makes sense. And so I started out very much just posting what I had for lunch. Like, it was just a platform where people were like, hey, what's that recipe? Can I make that? And so I'm like, hey, I'll put it on for my friends and family. And then it grew and it grew from there. So this is 11, 12 years ago, like a long time I've been utilizing Instagram. Like, I think everybody knows if you're not on Instagram there, your brand won't be seen, like all about reels, but I've been on there a long time. So when I first started my account, I just graduated as a dietitian. I did an undergrad, a Bachelor in health science majoring in nutrition. Then I went back and I did a master's in dietetic studies. So I just graduated as a dietitian and I was on like a contract job at the hospital. So I was a clinical based dietitian, but my contracts were, 3 months, 6 months. There was no permanency available. It was a very fought for jobs and there weren't many permanent positions available. So I sort of thought in the back of my mind, I need to do something just in case one of these contracts runs out and it doesn't get renewed, I won't have any work. So I was like, this Instagram and Facebook thing's kind of cool. Let me just see if I can get a bit of something going on there. I didn't even know what I was doing. And then fast forward 10 years, I started on there as the fitness dietitian. I was at the gym with a couple of friends of mine and I was like, what should my page be? Like, I don't want to call it my name. That's so I was like, wankery. Like, I'm not going to do that, right? And I have done that 10 years later. And they're like, well, you like the gym, you like fitness, you like food. And at the time I wanted to go into sports dietetics. I wanted to be the dietitian for the Broncos. I wanted to do that. Fast forward, I don't want to do that. They don't pay them very well. I quickly decided that's definitely not what I want to do. But at the time I was like, why not the fitness dietitian? So I was the fitness dietitian on Facebook and Instagram for over a decade. And that was where, after things started getting traction, I got a lot of followers. I started a podcast. I started multiple other businesses. That's where people were like, you should really brand as yourself now that you're sort of your own personality, your own brand. So I started, my YouTube channel, my podcast, my coaching program. It's all under Leanne Ward Nutrition. And the last thing to change over was my Instagram and my Facebook page. So I did that at the start of the year. I had to battle Meta for quite some months to prove that I was who I was in order to then change my name. It's a big long thing, but finally all across the platforms I'm consistently Leanne Ward Nutrition, and I don't think the fitness dietitian exists anymore. So that's exciting. So it's a big thing with how we came there, but I'm still into fitness. I still like it, but I'm not really niche in that sports nutrition world. And I'm more across sort of women's health and wellness more so than really niche into sports dietitian. So I think just rebranding as my name made a lot of sense.
And with that, going into the women's health, I've watched a lot of your things online, and something that sparked my interest is just where I loved it is you were talking about chocolate one day. Chocolate is my faux pas. I do like some chocolate. I don't eat much of it, but I do enjoy it. Well, Leanne's talking about chocolate. Maybe it's not too bad. So tell me about chocolate, bad or good, and like in what ratio?
Well, I mean, it's all about moderation, and people hate that word because it's so unsexy, but it is about moderation. But, a lot of people, they think they eat in moderation, but the reality is that they don't, because most people would say that moderation is probably about 80% good quality foods in your diet and 20% what are you going to call them? Junk foods, ultra processed foods. I'd term them soul foods, foods that aren't necessarily healthy for you, but fill up your soul. You know, they make you happy. Chocolate, for me, it's a glass of French rosé. It might be a beautiful dessert at a fancy restaurant, but most of us are actually doing far too much of that, because not only are we having the soul foods, the really beautiful, decadent things that really give us pleasure, we're also having a lot of what I call low sacrifice foods as well. So they're the biscuits, the cakes, the muffins, the potato chips, the crackers, just all of those things that sneak in throughout the day. Somebody's baked for morning tea at work, you forgot your lunch and you grab a sausage roll. All of these ultra processed foods that our great grandparents didn't have access to. And this is why Australia has an obesity problem at the moment. You know, 65-70% of Australians are overweight or obese, and it's because we have such a level of convenience to our eating. So is chocolate a soul food? Yes. Is it okay in moderation? Yes, but it also depends on how much, what else you're having throughout the day. So if you have a beautiful whole food diet and you're having your blueberry overnight oats in the morning, you're having a beautiful salmon salad with quinoa at lunch, and dinner's, you know, a nice eye fillet with some broccolini and some potato, there's nothing wrong with having, you know, some chocolate throughout the day there, or after dinner if you wanted. But if your breakfast was like a coffee and a croissant, you didn't really have lunch, and then you had a couple of rows of rice crackers and cheese and hummus for afternoon tea, and then you grazed on the kids' lunch boxes, or had, you know, half a bag of potato chips before dinner, and then dinner was Thai takeaway or, you know, a quick stop at KFC, the imbalance is not there. The moderation is not there. So then if you're then going to add chocolate on top of that, you're kind of compounding things. And that's the reality for most Australians. The baseline diet isn't good enough to be having these multiple soul foods that we're having every single day.
So the good foods that when you were just outlining, say, if you have this is okay, it sounded very whole foods with the vegetables. And if you consistently, you sort of said breakfast, you said lunch, and you said dinner. I heard something the other day, a couple of months ago, I felt myself really craving sugar. And I would go to the cupboard looking for the bad stuff. And I don't have much of it in there, so it was getting hard. Then I saw something that said about glucose spikes or something, and if I had some water and vinegar, say half an hour before, that maybe that would help with even those cravings. And even if you're going to have those, like say I'm going to have some of my chocolate, try and have it, as they called it, as dessert. So eat your lunch, eat a whole lunch, and then afterwards. What's your take on that? Because I did do that, and for me I felt better and I wasn't craving it as much. But is it in my head, or?
No, absolutely. There's definitely science behind that. You want to lessen the glucose spike or curve as much as possible. And this is predominantly for people with type 2 diabetes, with insulin resistance, but it also is for what you would call normal healthy people as well, because we don't really want people to just eat sugar alone or just eat carbohydrate alone. Ideally, we would want them to pair that with a bit of protein and with a bit of healthy fat as well, because there's basically 3 nutrients that slow down the digestion of carbohydrate or slow down the digestion of sugar in your body. So when your body absorbs that sugar, you don't want it to absorb it quickly, utilize it quickly, and then have a really big sugar crash after that. And that's what happens to most people. They'll have a 3 p.m., 2 p.m. craving. They'll grab a handful of lollies or a massive thing of chocolate, have that, the energy goes up and it comes crashing back down again. So the 3 nutrients that slow down that sugar spike are fat, protein, and fiber. So basically you're better off to have that with a meal. So there's just do this and it's a lot better. And then there's kind of gold standard. So if you were to have a bit of sugar or a soul food, do it after a meal, much better. But there is something where it's sort of the order of eating can be important as well. And within a meal, some people, again, it really works better for people with insulin resistance or blood glucose issues, type 2 diabetes, for example, where you would have vegetables or fiber first, you'd have a bit of protein and or fat, and then you'd finish off with carbohydrate last. So not appropriate for a lot of the population, but it's like something that's going to give you maybe a 5-10% edge, put it that way. The better thing that you can do is actually not eat too much carbohydrate overall, and pair that carbohydrate with some protein and with some vegetables, because the kicker is, and you see all of these hacks and little tweaks and stuff online, and they're not, most of them are actually okay, but what they're going to give you is a 5 or 10% edge. The reality is that most women in particular don't eat enough protein, and it's not evenly spread throughout the day. They also eat far too much carbohydrate. It's the refined type of carbohydrate. It's not the complex whole grain type of carbohydrate that we want, so the body absorbs it a lot quicker. And also the reality is that that 97% of people do not eat enough vegetables. We think we eat vegetables, but again, it's boring. It's not sexy. People don't want to hear it, but we do not eat enough vegetables. And the amount of clients that I work with that say, oh, I thought I ate vegetables until I worked with you, and oh my goodness, I wasn't eating enough.
It's like a plate of broccoli at dinner or
It's
something.
5 serves a day, and a serve is a cup of salad or half a cup of cooked vegetables. So it's like at least, and that's a minimum requirement, a minimum. So it's about 3 cups of cooked veggies at dinner or 5 to 6 cups of salad. And people don't do that. So ideally you want to spread it across your lunch and your dinner. So if you're having a tuna sandwich at lunch and if you've got a piece of lettuce and a piece of tomato on there, you're not even getting a serve in. So you've got to pick that up at dinner, and that's the reality. People don't. And then generally your potato, your corn, your sweet potato, we classify that as more starches, so they sort of fit in the carbohydrate box more so. So if you're having a lovely roast and you've got potato, sweet potato, corn, and green peas, they're predominantly starchy veggies. So you're not really doing anything from a blood sugar regulation perspective. You want more of that non-starchy veggie going in. Nothing wrong with some of your starchy veggies, but again, people pair potato and sweet potato together, and then they might put quinoa or rice with the same meal as well. So the load of carbohydrate overall is probably too much, and that's why we're seeing a lot of people with more unstable blood sugars or unstable hormones. But again, it's not so much the sequence in what we eat our food, it's just the composition of the food is wrong, and we're not getting anywhere near enough of the vegetable bulk that we probably should be getting in.
So you're talking about women and going back a bit on having not enough protein. And then I've seen recently you've been posting about creatine. Now, I used to work in gyms back in the day, and there was a lot of natural and not natural bodybuilders and stuff. And particularly with the boys, they were big on the creatine. They were bulking up their muscles because they're loading up. And then I've seen your new product, which is the creatine. I actually have creatine in my formulated compound that I take every day. So tell me, what does creatine even do for women, and why? Because I think that's quite a new thing for women to be thinking about. They might think of protein, they're all over the bloody silica and collagen and stuff because that's what they care about. But the creatine, as far as muscles and body, why?
Absolutely. So creatine is one of the safest and also most researched sports nutritional supplements in the world. So like you mentioned, a lot of the bodybuilders, a lot of the men have been all over creatine for decades and decades and decades. When there's no argument here that creatine helps with muscle mass. And where it's really important for females is because that females store, or females have 70 to 80% less endogenous creatine stores than what males do. We just don't store it. Women also don't tend to eat as much protein as what men eat. And creatine is predominantly found in animal-based products. It's found in meat, it's found in dairy, it's found in chicken, turkey, etc. Particularly if you're vegan and vegetarian, you should absolutely be on a creatine supplement, like no-brainer, absolute no-brainer. And I've always used it for my vegan and vegetarian clients, typically, but I've never really thought about it to give women a cognitive edge. And this is where some of the newer research is coming out. Is it going to be beneficial for your training, for your recovery, for your muscle mass? Absolutely, no-brainer. Yeah. But what about women who don't exercise? What about women who sporadically exercise, or they might do a little bit of walking, or they're not really interested in gaining weight, right, or gaining muscle? And it's not so much that it helps you gain muscle. For a lot of women, it just helps you maintain muscle. And after the age of 40, your muscle mass drops off by about 2% every year. And that's why a lot of women going through perimenopause or menopause end up with that, what they call that peri-belly, that little bit of spare tire around their tummy, because their metabolism is decreasing over time. Their muscle mass is decreasing over time. So something like having enough protein in your diet and supplementing with creatine can help you just maintain your muscle mass, which from a metabolic perspective is really, really helpful. Now, where the latest research and the science shows us about creatine is that not only is it great for your muscles, there's also a lot of emerging evidence that it helps with a cognitive perspective. So again, women going through perimenopause or out the other side, postmenopausal, that brain fog, women in that postpartum period, that brain fog, the cognitive thinking capacity, that's where creatine can be really, really helpful, because creatine feeds into our ATP energy cycle and helps us replenish that quick energy source. So that's why it's great for training, but it's also great for thinking and cognition. So we're seeing more and more research from a cognitive perspective, and we're also seeing some smaller emerging research from a mood perspective as well, mood, depression, that kind of thing as well. So nobody's saying, go off your antidepressants or anything like that, but it probably may be helpful from a mood and a vitality perspective as well. But there is 2 types of creatine in the world, and I feel like this is really important for women. because a lot of people get a bit of sort of GI upsets from too much creatine, because the traditional, what they called a loading dose back in the day that a lot of the bodybuilders or footballers used to take, was about 20 grams a day. They do that for about 5-7 days, then they drop down the dose to about, I think it was 5-6 grams a day. It was a huge amount, and they used to retain quite a lot of fluid, quite a lot of water, because creatine stored in the muscles. Now, for women, I only really recommend about 3 to 5 grams a day, but you have to take it every single day, because again, we don't store it as well, right? And we're not taking these huge doses that allow our muscles to become saturated with it. So we need smaller doses. But those smaller doses reduce the bloating effect, reduce the water retention effect, and also can lessen other sort of negative side effects. Some people report, headaches, that kind of thing. So that is an important thing. The dose, I really only recommend women need about 3 to 5 grams a day. And then secondly, where is your creatine coming from? Because most people don't understand that creatine throughout the world either comes from China or it comes from Germany. The German stuff is called Courier Pure. It's the best, it's the purest creatine in the world, 99.9% purity. If the brand that you're taking does not disclose where it's coming from, I can promise you it's coming from China. Even if it says 100% creatine monohydrate, it's still coming from China. Unless because Courier Pure, or the German source creatine, is so much more expensive that if a brand, such as my brand, designed by dietitians, we have actively sourced our creatine from Germany, it's Courier Pure, we have paid so much more for that we are going to tell people about that, because the purity is so much better. And if you compare the Chinese creatine and the German creatine, if you just look at that, you can see the differences. You can see the differences in terms of the purity. It has less of a bloating effect as well. And so there's big benefits in terms of the different types of purity and where that's sourced in the world as well. So it's really important that you have a look at the brand that you're taking, particularly for females, because we tend to just suffer from more of those side effects in terms of the abdominal stuff. Like, we're just a little bit more sensitive to bloating than what I would say most of our male counterparts are, I'll put it that way.
Yes. I mean, we get all the joys, don't we, really?
Yes, exactly. So it's a really exciting supplement, and it's becoming really, really popular as well. And lots of people, really big influencers in that sort of nutrition science space, are talking about it. It's one of my favorite supplements of 2025. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I picked up on it because I haven't seen anyone before, well, you, and now it's coming out, promoting creatine for women. So I've known about it, maybe I've had it here and there, but I've never seen someone actively promote it. And I train every day, and so anything that helps with mind fogginess or anything, I'm loving. So, and I think that's really important, because there is so much noise out here on what to eat, what not to eat, what supplements. I had a friend the other day tell me they just went online because they saw something online, then they went on to a different site and just ordered up all these different supplements. And I'm like, you're a fool, but well done. But
yeah.
You should
Can I say something on that, actually?
Yeah.
Because supplements can actually be dangerous, right? And there's a big misconception that, oh, it's natural, oh, it's a vitamin, how could it be dangerous? I've seen people go to the ICU, like when I used to work at the hospital, go into the ICU with liver failure, with issues with their kidneys. Just because it's a supplement or it's recommended by a naturopath or somebody holistic does not mean that it's safe. So it's really, really important that the brand that you're taking is actually, like, the supplement formulations are actually done by either medical experts or dietitians, people who actually understand what's in there, where are these supplements sourced from? Because I've seen, again, brown rice protein, which people have been concerned about the levels of arsenic in it, because it, the brown rice has come from China, for example. Like, where are your supplements coming from? Where are they grown? Do they have contaminants in there? And especially, I've seen women who are pregnant or breastfeeding just still taking their supplements. Did you ever think to turn the label over, read the back of the label? There's a reason why 90% of supplements say not safe for pregnancy and breastfeeding. It's really, really a thing that kind of grinds my gears, because people just think supplements are safe. They're all safe. They're vitamins and minerals, they can be safe. But just because they're vitamins and minerals doesn't necessarily mean it's safe. And it's not going to help a lot of people if you've got a bad quality diet and you're just throwing supplements on top of it. So do I own a supplement brand designed by dietitians? Yes, but I'm not just out here recommending that everybody take supplements, because you've got to get the baseline diet right first, and you've got to check that, do any of those supplements interact with any of the medications that you're taking, or do they interact with each other? Again, I've seen seen patients with neuropathy because they've taken a multivitamin, they've taken an energy something, and they've taken another hair, skin, nail something, and the level of B vitamins in there is so high that they're getting tingling and numbness in their fingers and toes. Like, these things can be dangerous, particularly if you're stacking supplements. You're taking multiple supplements from multiple brands. You're not quite sure where they're sourced from. You're not quite sure who made them. They just sound really good because the marketing hype on the website was amazing.
It's going to make
sold into that. And they bought 50,000 reviews that all of these fake women are being like, oh my God, this is amazing. You've just got to be so careful because you can do irreversible damage to your body if you're supplement stacking. And it's a really, really big thing that's becoming more of a concern, particularly as a dietitian for me. I start a client and I go, right, we're going to stop all of the supplements. We're going to get the baseline diet right. We're going to, monitor your sleep, monitor your stress levels, get your gut right, fix your hormones, and then let's see where and if we actually need to use some supplements, because so many of them are taking about 13 sporadically. They're like, I still feel like crap. I'm like, why are you taking them if you still don't feel great, if you've still come to me for help? And then what are we taking? Are we taking it in the right dose? Are we taking the right amount? Are we taking it, should it be twice a day? Should it be once every 2 days? Again, the dose and the type actually matter when it comes to supplementation, because if you're not taking enough to have a clinical effect, you're basically just wasting your money at the end of the day.
Yeah, okay. So that's kind of important for everyone to be, don't just like look in your cupboard, and if you do have all these random supplements, vitamins, vitamin B, whatever you've got, hair and skin, collagen, silica, whatever you've got, and you haven't gotten professional advice, maybe think twice. I know I fell into that trap in my 20s. I was on a mission and I had all these different things and I felt so sick. And I went to the doctor and I said what I was on, and she's like, cut everything. I was on, hair, skin, and I was in my 20s. I didn't even need this shit. I was in like hair, skin, and nails. I was on B12. I was on whatever I was taking. And I love that. You see 20, we all did it, but in your early 20s and you're on all this stuff and your skin's beautiful anyway. And they're like,
100%. Yeah. The collagen in your skin in your 20s is amazing.
It's so amazing. You don't need any of it. But then, the doctor said cut it all. And to be honest, I felt so much better once I cut it. And then I think went to one thing that I probably needed after a blood test. So now I heard you the other day, and we'll quickly go through it because it confused me. You had online, or it didn't confuse me, maybe I didn't pay enough attention, on 30-30-30 rule. Mm-hmm. You lost me by the second 30 of counting something, but let's talk through it.
Right, so a good hack for your gut health and your hormones. And what a lot of people, again, fail to realize that good quality healthy eating in the right portions for your bodies can do absolute wonders for your gut health, for your hormones, for fat loss, without having to do anything fancy, without having to take a ton of expensive supplements, without having to cut a lot of things out. Because a lot of people think, oh, I want to lose weight, I want to stabilize my hormones, I can't have sugar, I can't have dairy, I can't have alcohol, I can't eat out. And they might last 2 or 3 weeks on it and then they fall off the wagon. It's just not sustainable. So 30-30-30 is a hack for your hormones, your gut health and fat loss, because it's a hack because most people aren't doing it. Most people aren't doing 30 grams of protein a day, 30 grams of fiber per day. Sorry, let me start again. 30 grams of protein per meal, 30 grams of fiber per day, and 30 different types of plants per week.
Oh, okay.
So 30 grams of fiber a day is going to boost your metabolism, support fat loss, really help maintain your muscles, if not help build them.
What's
30
good examples of the fiber?
Of the fiber?
Yeah.
So fiber is a daily target, about 30 grams of fiber a day. So different types of whole grains, your rolled oats, your quinoa, your legumes, beans and legumes, really great source, fruits and vegetables. The amount of people who haven't eaten a piece of fruit like all week, right? The amount of people who never have put beans or legumes in their meals. If you're making spaghetti bolognese, throw in a tin of brown lentils. If you're making a pasta salad, put in some black beans. If you're making some enchiladas for dinner, put in some red kidney beans. Just a wonderful, wonderful plant-based hack. So you're not going to get to that 30 grams of fiber a day if the majority of carbs that you eat are white. You rarely have fruit. You're not getting those 5 serves of vegetables in every single day. So you can easily track your fiber intake in any of the sort of food-based tracking apps, because the average Australian gets about, I think it's like 12 grams a day or 15 grams a day. It's nothing. It's about half of what we ideally need. And the more fiber you have, the more full and satiated, same with protein, that you're actually going to feel after your meals. So many people are eating meals with mismatched macros or not enough of the macronutrient balance. They finish the meal, they feel full, or like over full, but they don't feel satiated. They don't feel satisfied because they don't have enough of the protein and the fiber in the meal. They've eaten too much carbs. It's a massive bowl of pasta. There's not enough veggie bulk there. There's not enough fiber bulk there. They're like, oh, I feel a bit full, a bit kind of gross, like a bit bloated, a bit overfull, but I'm still not quite satisfied. Like I still feel like I want more food.
Yeah.
It's because they're just not getting that balance of protein, fat, fiber, vegetable ratio right. So that's the 30 grams of fiber each day, and then 30 types of plants per week. We know the single best thing you can do for your gut health is to have a diversity of foods in your diet. And what that means is aiming for about 30 types of plants every single week. It sounds like a lot, but a plant isn't just a vegetable. It's a fruit, it's a vegetable, it's a whole grain, it's a nut, it's a seed, it's a legume. So if you have overnight oats for breakfast every morning, no one's going to argue that that's not a great choice, right? You might have some oats, some milk, some chia seeds, some raspberries in it. You have that 5 days a week. You're not getting any diversity in there. The oats, the chia seeds, and raspberries are all counted as plants because they're fiber, they're plant points, but that's 3. But if the next day you did oats, flax seeds, and blueberries, you're adding an additional 2 plant points on because you're having that diversity of foods. So every different type of plant or fiber has a different nutrient, has a different vitamin, has a different mineral. There's a reason why there's a green capsicum, a red capsicum, a yellow capsicum. All of our different types of vegetables and fruits with the different colored skins, they've all got different nutrients and different vitamins in there. Most healthy people should not need a multivitamin if they're eating enough good quality plants. So the 30-30-30 hack is meant to get in enough protein, get in enough fiber, and get in enough diversity for your diet to help with fat loss, to help with hormone balance, to help with gut health. But again, people aren't doing the basics. They're skipping off to the, I'll take my shot of apple cider vinegar, I'll take my greens powder instead of eating my greens. Like a greens powder isn't going to give you a plant point. It's so refined, it's so ground up. You're going to get small amounts of nutrients, but not the bulk that you actually need every single day. So most people are, if they're meal prepping, they're doing a great job at that. But again, they're eating the same thing 5 days in a row. So just those small tweaks, or if you have a banana in your oats, make it blueberries the next day. Instead of using peanut butter every day, use almond butter, use ABC spread so that you're actually getting almonds, Brazil nuts, and cashews. You're getting 3 plant points, not just 1 plant point. At dinner, use whole grain wrap sometimes, use quinoa sometimes, use brown rice, red rice, black rice. It's a mouthful. Use different types of whole grains because again, people forget about that. Like when was the last time we used bulgur wheat in a meal? When was the last time we used a bit of tabbouleh instead of always having the same rice in our dinner? We always have sweet potato. When was the last time you tried purple potato? When was the last time you used corn as a starchy veggie instead of white potato? So just have a bit more diversity in your diet, and it's a single best thing that you can actually do for your gut health.
Maybe we could ask our listeners to set themselves a challenge and even just start with one meal and Google a new recipe or go through some of your recipe books that you've put out and just try something new. I know that challenges the kids sometimes, but just do it for yourself if it's not for the kids. Tell me, what do you think about coffee? Coffee is bad or coffee is good?
I love coffee. I've been sipping on it while we've been chatting. So coffee is good, but like everything, there's a limit, right? Like broccoli is good. Like if you're going to eat 60 ton of broccoli a day, it's not good. But if you're not going to eat any broccoli, also not good. So there's limits to everything. So we can't say that something is just good or bad. Most people tolerate coffee quite well. And there's actually been research studies that show some health benefits in terms of caffeine too. But if you take your coffee, like a couple of my American clients used to before they started working with me, with, full fat milk, with cream, with sugar, with this half stuff, with more whipped cream on top, that's not coffee. That's bloody dessert. Like, come on. So it depends on how you have your coffee. Do you have a massive one or do you have a small skim latte? Do you have it black or do you have 3 pumps of caramel syrup into it? Coffee itself is absolutely fine. Some people are a little bit sensitive. They can get some heart palpitations if they have too much. The recommendations are, I think from memory, about 200 to 300 milligrams a day. A standard shot of barista coffee is about 100 milligrams of coffee. So 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day for a standard person is probably more than enough. If you're someone who's rolling around off 4, 6, 8 cups of coffee a day, probably too much. It's probably going to impact your sleep as well. And too much caffeine can actually interfere with some really important nutrients like iron, for example. So a lot of my ladies are just having too much coffee throughout the day. Coffee and milk as well can actually interfere with the absorption of iron. So if you do have low iron or you do take iron supplements, a lot of women do, make sure you're having your tea and coffee about an hour apart from your iron supplement just to maximize the absorption. So I'm a big fan of coffee, but it really comes down to how much and what you put it with, which is the real kicker. Because I tend to just have soy milk in my coffee. That's how I like it. And I tend to have a smaller or medium one if I have it. But if you're having a large one with 3 sugars, you're having a bit of whipped cream on top,
Mhm.
You know, you're having chai lattes, which again tend to be made with a sugar syrup. Those kind of things I get a little bit more concerned about. And I will finish this off with saying the type of milk, I couldn't care less if you had plant milk or dairy milk. Like, I'm not going to make any arguments here. Like, both have benefits, but make sure your milk's fortified, particularly if you're having 2 cups of coffee a day like I do. That's about 500-600 milligrams of calcium that you're missing out on. And if you're going through those peri or menopausal years, your calcium requirements are sky high. Women 50 plus need about 1,300 milligrams of calcium a day. And if you're having almond milk, I can almost guarantee that the coffee shop that you're getting it from is not fortified. The almond milk is not fortified with extra calcium, and you're just missing out on a huge whack of calcium you could be having. So if you're just having almond milk for the sake of having almond milk because you think it's trendy, it's probably better that you went back to full cream or skim milk for the sake of your bones, because that calcium is really, really important nutrient. There are so many women out there who are at risk or have osteoporosis or osteopenia because they're not doing the weight training that they're supposed to do, and they're not actually having enough calcium in through their diet because so many people have swapped to plant-based milk. It'll say on the nutrition label, it'll say the calcium amount. Some brands, they say they're 40, but they're like 80 milligrams. Like a cup of dairy milk is about 250-300 milligrams of calcium in a cup. So that's what you want to try and emulate. You want to find a brand that has at least 300 milligrams of calcium per serve, because if you have 2 coffees a day, that's 600 milligrams. If you're in menopause, you've got to get up to 1,300 milligrams a day. At least you're, nearly halfway there. But if you're just having plant milk that's not fortified, you're never going to get there without a supplement. And if you don't have a lot of dairy, if you don't like to have dairy, that's fine. But you probably should consider a calcium supplement, and probably should consider talking to a health professional about that. So you're getting onto a good one, you're getting the right amount in, and you're making sure that you're not nutrient stacking like we talked about before. It's not competing with any of the other medications or supplements that you're taking.
Yeah, that's good to know. That's good to know. Yeah, I personally don't like cow's milk, but I've never have. I used to never took it as a kid, the sort of thing. I used to get sick of it, so it's never been big in my diet. But that's interesting to hear. I had a friend at the gym, and she keeps coming to me, and she's like, "I feel bloated. I feel bloated. I feel like I've got inflammation. What should I do? What should I do?" I don't know what would work for you, but you would get that a lot. Do you have any? I'm going to go with a very broad hack on generally women. She is older, not old, but she's older, so she's in her 50s, and she's fit but she's just feeling like she's got that, when you've just got that bloating, that inflammation. Is there anything that women can initially do 1, 2, 3 to see if they can bring it down?
Yeah, I would say most women in their 50s, is it bloating, or is it just a couple of kilos weight gain around that middle area, that central sort of tummy area, which a lot of women is linked back to hormones. It's linked back to that drop in estrogen, the menopausal years. You just cannot tolerate as much carbohydrate then. So a lot of women who are super fit, they've exercised their whole life, they've done nothing different with their diet. It's the impact of hormones basically once you hit. For some women, it's late 40s. For most women, it's about mid 50s, right? Mm. So it's actually changing up the quality of your diet. Not none, but a slightly lesser amount of carbohydrate, more vegetables, more fiber, and more protein in your diet. So again, that's where chatting with a dietitian can give you some really practical strategies. If it is legitimate bloating, some people are very sensitive to specific carbohydrates that are called FODMAPs. Again, you may have heard of a low FODMAP diet. It's quite complex. You would only want to do that under the guidance of a dietitian. And even then, it's been shown to be just as effective as gut-directed hypnotherapy. So a lot of people, sensitive tummy, IBS, that kind of thing, just have hypersensitive nerve endings. So they experience the bloating and the sensitivity more so than other people. Like, I'm sure my husband gets bloating, but I, with IBS, feel it and have the sensation a lot more often, whereas he's just doesn't faze him whatsoever. Whereas I'm like, oh, that's really uncomfortable. I feel quite bloated after I might eat a bit of extra onion or a bit of extra garlic or something. So there are some trigger foods which reducing them and down in the diet can be helpful. But I have to say, a low FODMAP diet is not a diet forever. It's a diet where you work out your trigger foods, you sort of reintroduce them to figure out your tolerance to that, and then you can actually increase that tolerance over time. The gut is like a muscle. You can train it to adapt and tolerate more foods long term, but again, it's quite a complex thing to do. So that's not something that I would jump straight into. I would be more so looking at the portions of foods, and if she's having anything potentially new that, she might have tried a new type of bread, or she might have swapped to, oat milk in her latte in the morning because she thought that was really good, and that's giving her issues. Or she might have gone from oat milk back to dairy milk and she's got a bit of a lactose intolerance. Anything new that's happened in her diet recently, For somebody younger, I would have said, is it just that bloating linked to more the period kind of, once a month? That, because again, that's very normal, and it's just the impact of hormones. But for a lot of people, I feel like bloating is linked back to just being sluggish. Your bowels aren't as regular. And again, with the big impact of hormone, the drop in estrogen in those 50 years, your bowels can get a little bit more sluggish. So upping the fiber, upping the water intake in your diet can be really helpful. Trialing a little something like psyllium husk, going on to a higher fiber breakfast, overnight oats with some chia seeds, some flax seeds, kiwi fruit, berries, really great for your bowels as well. Just getting those bowels ticking along regularly can do wonders for bloating, because if you're sluggish and backed up and things aren't moving through properly, you're going to feel a lot more bloated. And I feel like for the bulk of my clients, not all of them, but the bulk of them, bloating is generally related to mild constipation. Not so bad that you actually feel it as constipation, just more of that sluggishness. Things aren't quite moving through as well. And again, particularly as you get a little bit older, not old, older, you do tend to sort of slow down a little bit. The kids grow up, they move out of home, you're not doing as much. So you're slowing down a little bit. Sometimes we're eating a little bit less food as well. So if there's less bulk going through the digestive system, things can move through a little bit slower, again, cause that feeling of sluggishness and bloating as well. So bloating is a tricky one. There's no quick fix to it, but I would be looking at, are there any changes in the diet recently? Is your fiber intake high enough? Is your water intake high enough? Is your vegetable intake high enough? Are you having some whole grains and legumes? Is it more bloating, or is it more related to the fact that you just feel like you've got a little bit of extra love around that tummy area?
All right, on my final thing for people to take away with them, and because we're all living such busy lives and we're always on the go, what would be your number one quick hack for them to take away of going, what's a quick, easy thing that they should just grab on the run to eat, or just to make sure that, you're at least getting something good in? But I want something quick, but that is good, and that might even taste good.
That you can make at home, or that
Yeah,
you're going
make
to
it
like
home, or even buy if you know something. Just
Yeah,
a hack for the busy
I'm a
life.
massive fan of the salad bags. Massive fan. Like, I would use them
Good.
multiple times a week. Like, I love the Asian salad. There's like a green goddess one. There's a Mexican one. And people are like, oh my gosh, like, do you use the dressing, vegetable oil? Like, oh my gosh. Again, like, these tiny little things aren't going to make a huge impact. Like, if I'm going to grab a salad bag and use the dressing, because let's be honest, it tastes better with the dressing, and get maybe a roast barbecue chook or something, and throw some potato in the air fryer or something, or maybe get one of the rice cups, take it out of the plastic. I don't want to reheat in plastic. I want to use a bit of the rice and quinoa blend, a bit of roast chicken, and a bit of salad. I'll use a bit of the dressing because it makes it taste better, and it's far better than me going to KFC or me skipping dinner entirely than binging half a block of chocolate later on because I'm starving. So again, we tend to vilify these tiny little things, but in the grand scheme of things, people aren't eating enough protein generally. They're not eating enough vegetables generally. They're not eating enough whole grains. So if using a little bit of the dressing out of your salad bag means that you can have a better quality dinner, I am all for that. And a tiny little bit of vegetable oil, it's not really going to be that harmful as part of a wholesome meal, versus it's the vegetable oils in the crackers, the biscuits, the cakes, they're the vegetable oils we're really concerned about in the ultra processed foods. I really couldn't care less if you used a dressing on your salad, if it meant that you actually ate more salad, because that's the crux of the issue, is that as Australians, we're not eating enough salad and vegetables anyway. So why not at least make them taste good so we can get a little bit more in? So that's my massive hack for busy people, is salad bags. Use some of the pre-marinated protein options, grab a barbecue chook. You don't have to eat the stuffing, you don't have to eat the skin, you can literally just eat the plain chicken breast if you want to, and make it easy. Like, there's pre-chopped veggies as well. If you don't like salad, you can get rounds of corn, pre-chopped potatoes, pre-chopped pumpkin. There's even pre-chopped onion if you want to go that far. Like, you pay for convenience, don't get me wrong, these foods are more expensive, but if you're a busy person and you're working, you're having trouble eating well, you're gonna have to use some of these more convenient style options. And there are tons of convenient options in the supermarkets these days. We just have to hunt a little harder to find them. But there's absolutely no excuses for busy people, because there are lots and lots of options available in our supermarkets every day.
Yeah, so like you've been saying, if you can at least start with your foundation, start to build that. Don't punish yourself for the little things like the dressing. Work on your vegetables and your proteins. And I would say go to your site and get some creatine to every woman out there listening as well, and speak to a dietitian. But Leanne, thank you for being on Transforming the Game. This has been absolutely eye-opening. I've written a few notes here on what I need to go and investigate further and put into my bolognese veggies for tonight to make sure that I'm getting a bit more fiber and a bit more vegetables into my day. I've absolutely enjoyed our chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if you're looking for more, you can find me leanneward.com.au, or my coaching program is leangutmindmethod.com. Thank you so
Beautiful.
much.
Yes, I will have all the links in the description as well. So you can reach out to Leanne for all the help.
Amazing. Thank you for having me on.